not just the weekend, but the National Football League. Congratulations, everyone. You have made it through the offseason. Although, I love summertime, man. I do love summer. You know my sentiments on this, right? I love football season, but I hate scraping my windshield, and unfortunately, this is the conduit to it now, right?
Yeah, and it's tough because, at least with the NBA, for example, it begins during the cold months, but the completion of that season is around the time of transition.
Once you're going into this tunnel.
The NFL is all dark.
Right.
There's no weather light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the NFL season.
But it was a great game last night. I think it was, there were a couple of things that I noticed last night that I think we can discuss as it relates to the Indianapolis Colts. And I think we'll do that over the course of the show today on a Friday. But first, let me begin by saying happy Friday to all of you. Happy weekend upon us. My name is Jake Query. You just heard the voice of Jimmy Cook. Eddie Garrison is here as well.
Hello.
And we had a meeting, some 14, 15 months ago. Consulting firms were hired. Marketing firms were hired. And they had all kinds of names in the hopper. Our friends over at Greenfield Signs were coming up with different logos and slogans and everything else. And then they, after all of this exhaustive research, came up with the incredibly creative name of Query & Company.
Yep.
So the company, of course, all of you that are listening to the program, we appreciate it. Jimmy Cook is the president of the company, Eddie Garrison, the CEO, and I'm not really sure what my role is, but
Chairman of the board.
Chairman of the board, thank you. Chairman of the board's the name of my intramural team at North Central, by the way. So we are happy to have you here today. Last night, the NFL season officially got underway, and there were two things that I took away from that. Number one, and I'm you get overreaction Friday on this case, but, after week one, there's always overreaction, right? Oh, my gosh, this guy's a great player, that guy's a great player. Sometimes guys just have good games at the right time, and that's their flash in the pan. We'll see what happens with that on both sides. Actually, Kansas City and Baltimore both having guys that had kind of breakout nights. But one thing that I noticed, now, Jimmy, I'll put it to you in trivia form.
All right.
You are a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, there's not going to be a wrong answer here.
Okay.
But there was one thing as I was watching that game that I thought to myself, this is the difference. When you watch college football, for example, I am a Clemson fan, okay? And a season ticket holder for Clemson in the Watson through Trevor Lawrence years, etc. And I saw Mike Williams and Justin Ross and Travis Etienne and Jordan Liggett, all these guys that are playing on Sundays. And when I would watch Clemson, and I'm watching their offense with those players and those open space guys, and then I'd watch a Big Ten game between Iowa and Michigan State, or for that matter, Indiana or Purdue, whatever else, and I could see the differential in something. Now, last night when I was watching both Baltimore and Kansas City, obviously notably Kansas City, but Baltimore to a great extent, there was something that jumped out at me that I'm curious and hesitant as to whether or not Indianapolis possesses it. It is what?
Did you say you were giving me multiple choice, or is it just off the top?
Off the top.
Fine. I felt like that was both two high-level proven quarterback play. I felt like that was the standard of what you would expect week to week in the National Football League, what both Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes were able to do.
Jackson missed some wide-open guys on it. But
he did.
To your point, in terms of you're on the right path.
Okay.
Now, like I said, because that's not a wrong answer, right?
And you look at the map for Richardson, so many people want to put him in a pigeonhole of Lamar Jackson. That's what I want to be able to see, is the legs late in games,
right,
along with less inaccuracy, right?
Eddie, would you like to guess what it is?
I'm going to guess consistent pass rush from both teams.
Also a good, an
at least from
point,
the Kansas City
and
defensive
that's
line
something that
perspective.
Certainly you hope the Colts this year can have.
Can I throw one more dart?
Yes.
High-level playmakers on offense?
Bingo. What I watched last night, and it's a little bit of chicken and egg. Is Andy Reid an offensive genius and guru that makes special playmakers out of guys that were cast-offs elsewhere, not cast-offs, but would be run-of-the-mill elsewhere? Or do the Kansas City Chiefs have elite-level open space guys that make Andy Reid look like a genius? You can go back and forth on that till the cows come home. And maybe in Kansas City they are. But in both cases, whether you're talking about Lamar Jackson, whether you're talking about, Rice, and I know that wasn't the first that we had seen
Xavier Worthy
of him.
last night.
Xavier Worthy on the one play down the right side. There are
Zay Flowers, go through it, yeah.
There are elite-level space creators offensively on both teams where they're just fast. You watch it, and it's like, whoa, this is fast. Like, when the Golden State Warriors truly had the Splash Brothers going and all of them were healthy, they played fast. I mean, you'd watch a game and you're, oh my gosh, a minute and a half just passed and they just put 16 points on the board. And nobody had it was totally new to people. Not totally new, but you get what I'm saying.
It was league changing.
It was league changing. The NFL has been forever trending in this direction, but what we're seeing now is the extension of the college game where the Clemsons, the Alabamas, the elite, the Ohio States, they're faster and they're bigger and better in space than those teams that only hope to emulate that. When I think about the Colts roster, and I'm watching last night between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm thinking to myself, look at the way that these teams are able to take a small crease and then spurt it out into the open field and get guys into big chunks of space and get downfield. And I think the Colts don't have that. Michael Pittman Jr. is a really good player, but he's kind of an over-the-middle, tough catch, couple yards after catch guy. And then I had to remind myself, Jimmy, wait a minute. They have a freak athlete at quarterback that, assuming he stays healthy, can indeed extend plays and take off and tuck and run like we saw Lamar Jackson do. He has the arm strength. Now, whether he has the accuracy and the vision, we don't know yet, but he has the arm strength to do an across-the-body quick slant pass a la Patrick Mahomes. They have, and again, combine, mini camp, training camp, preseason games are not the NFL regular season. But they have, by presentation, the possibility of a guy like an A.D. Mitchell, once he's healthy, like a Josh Downs. If he indeed is the guy that was only an Anthony Richardson at quarterback away from being who we have expected him to be, like an Alec Pierce.
Yeah.
And then the weapon of Jonathan Taylor, who, yes, you can hand it to him and run in between the tackles, but you could also get him out and flare him out in space, and now he becomes just like those other guys that we mentioned. So I think the Colts on paper have the blueprint that last night is a precursor of what we might see in Indianapolis. There are other teams that look at that and say, that's how we need to play, that's how we need to beat. They don't have the personnel for it. And I don't know that the Colts have the personnel for it. On paper, it looks like they might.
You know what they do
have? What we're about to see is whether or not they do.
You know what they do have, to your earlier point? At least they believe it, and I believe it. They have the offensive mind. The belief around the league is Shane Steichen.
Correct.
I'm not going to put him in the same breath as Andy Reid, but you look at Andy Reid and you think offensive guru, offensive genius. You mentioned it at the start of the show. That's what people believe about Shane Steichen, his track record as a coordinator and some of the concepts and designs that you saw last year in his first stint as the head coach of the Colts. This is a cautious approach to the season, what I'm about to say, but if you continue to see the brilliance on display of his play design and his coaching, you can find speed. Like, I'm not saying that it's as easy to find as, we joke about backup running backs, but you can find speed in drafts. You can find speed in free agency if need be, even if it doesn't pan out for a guy like an Alec Pierce or a guy like an A.D. Mitchell, or it slows down for Jonathan Taylor. But the key part to that, anybody can have fast playmakers. Do you have the guys that can, from a systematic standpoint, set them up scheme-wise for success,
correct.
and they believe they have that with Shane Steichen?
We've seen forever, the first advent that I can recall of the experimental, like we're going to get speed, Ronaldo Nehemiah and Willie Gault and guys that, it's like, oh, man, they got this world-class sprinter, and they're putting him out there for the San Francisco 49ers. These guys aren't doing anything. Willie Gault was okay, but, they were almost gimmick.
Right.
It's a different thing to be able – you are correct. I mean, it's an excellent point. It's one thing to have speed in space guys. It's the other to be able to figure out how to take advantage of that and get them in the right position, right? And I agree with you, the fact that Shane Steichen seems to be a guy that can do that. But we shall see. We got a good show lined up today. Today is Friday.
Yes, sir.
And that means two things, Eddie. Would you like to guess what that means in terms of this show for a Friday?
It's a good for the heart Friday, Jake.
It is exactly that. And I have not one but two stories that I'm just thrilled with about athletes, that the kind of story that you go, that's why I follow sports. That kind of story, that kind of perseverance, that's why I follow sports. We have two of them, so it's almost a bonus today. And then in addition to that, we have a new segment that we're starting. Now,
what's that segment, Jake?
Thank you, Eddie. This is a query brain dropping, essentially, is what it is, okay? Because this came to me in the middle of the night. It was not long ago, probably 3 weeks ago, I was laying there during one of my bouts of insomnia. I had a really, really, really strange thing happen last night during an insomnia bout, which I'll tell you guys off there. I'll save it. I don't want to bore the listeners with it.
Are you building an ark now?
I am. We had a dry summer, but, you always have to be prepared, right? There was a guy in Allisonville Road when I was a kid that built an ark.
Really?
In his backyard, and for like 3 years.
How far did he get?
Completed it.
Really?
Anybody of my age range, okay, that lived on the north side of Indianapolis between, let's say, 1985 and 87 knows exactly what I'm talking about. On Allisonville Road at about 6400 North, there was just this ark being built in this guy's backyard, and it turned out it was massive. And I think he actually launched it somewhere. I don't know.
Maybe he sold it to Louisville or wherever that is in Kentucky.
That's right. It wasn't quite that big, but it was darn big, right? But at any rate, so a couple of weeks ago, I'm laying there, and I thought, I know people love the Colts, right? I like the Colts.
Sure.
I think one of the things that apparently people have figured out that I enjoy is nostalgic Indianapolis. I love the history of Indianapolis. And there's a lot of it when it comes to the Colts. Now, for me, it doesn't seem like long ago. I mean, I have a weird memory in the fact that I can just remember the mundane and the routine. Somebody mentions Jason Belser, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll never forget when he got the stop on fourth down heading into the halftime against the Niners in 1996, and then threw his helmet and all the way down across the field as they were running off the field. And people are like, how do you remember that? I'm like, I have no idea. Or Zach Crockett running and throwing up the Omega sign in San Diego for his first touchdown, 162 yards I think he ran for in the playoffs, and the Colts' first playoff win on the road. I don't know how I remember that. But there are great characters, great players, great stories, great history with the Colts. And one of the things that I have figured out is that a lot of these players, a lot of guys that came through Indianapolis, even if they play elsewhere, even if their career takes them other places, they still keep tabs with Indianapolis. They still follow the Colts. They still stay in touch with guys they played with, and as a result, they've got a group text where they're talking about games, whatever else. That I've kind of figured out. So I thought, you know what? Why not on Fridays, to kick things off for each weekend, why not have one of these former Colt players that can take a trip down memory lane and talk about where this franchise has been? Because we think in Indianapolis at times that the Colts have always been rainbows and lollipops and, prime.
Sunshine.
It now is a rite of passage, right? Sunshine. It's a rite of passage in Indianapolis that the Colts are a team that annually is expected to be one that is playing in late January. And yes, it's been a while, but we don't feel that way because we got so accustomed to it. I mean, it was a fait accompli for years. Oh, they're going to start out 9-0, 10-0, 11-0. Before that, there were growing pains. This is a franchise, when it came to Indianapolis, that had acne. This is a franchise that wore braces and then a headgear. This is a franchise that couldn't wear sweatpants, on certain days. All of the things that are the awkward part of adolescence and puberty, the Colts went through before our very eyes here in Indianapolis. And there are certain players that helped get them out of that. And so I thought it'd be fun each Friday to catch up with one of those. Each week we're going to try to catch up with. Now, I can't guarantee we're going to get a player per week, but so far we got a pretty good lineup set up. We're going to start off today with a guy like Anthony Richardson that, as a rookie, was starting for the Indianapolis Colts and starting regularly. And I recall when he was their third-round pick in 1987 or 8. I always get confused because the year is, so I think it was 88.
Correct.
And at that time, the Colts had gone through their growing pains. They had gone through, they had Gary Hogaboom, and they'd won games through, they won a division title because of the strike in 87 and the fact that they had a quarterback that went ahead and played and was going up against, union workers or, well, in this case, non-union workers, and et cetera, and then went to Cleveland and got beat. And they always had this rotation of quarterbacks from the time that they arrived from Baltimore, and they never had a young guy that they handed the franchise to. And it looked like they had that in 88 with Chris Chandler. Chris Chandler was drafted in the third round out of the University of Washington. I thought he was a really solid player as a rookie. He was part of that big Monday night victory over the Broncos that really kind of captured the imagination of this city and got people excited. And he had 2, I thought, really solid foundation years for a young quarterback. And then at that time, the Colts offensive coordinator was Leon Burnett, who had been the head football coach at Purdue that recruited Jeff George to Purdue. And when Jeff George was the number 1 high school player in America, Leon Burnett recruited him to Purdue. Leon Burnett then got fired by Purdue. And at that time, the only coach in America that had not recruited Jeff George out of Warren Central was Fred Akers at Texas. And Fred Akers at Texas didn't recruit Jeff George. He was asked about it. Why are you not recruiting the kid from Indianapolis? Well, I run basically 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I run essentially, I don't know if it was a wishbone, but I am a running, I don't throw the football. So there's no need to have a throwing quarterback. So Leon Burnett gets fired at Purdue. Jeff George is still there. And who do they hire but Fred Akers from Texas? So George decides he's going to transfer, announces he's transferring to Miami. In the interim between when he makes his announcement and then when he signs, Miami goes and signs, and I can never remember if it was Steve Walsh or Craig Erickson. I think it was Steve Walsh. So George changes his mind and ends up at Illinois. Has an unbelievable junior year in particular at Illinois, has a year of eligibility left, but goes ahead and declares for the NFL draft. And Jim Irsay and notably Leon Burnett, who was the offensive coordinator who had Jeff at Purdue, say, we got to get this guy. And Chris Chandler, who's their quarterback, then becomes expendable. They trade him to Tampa, one of the, I believe, 9 franchises that Chris Chandler played for in his career, ultimately then replacing George in Atlanta later and taking the Falcons to a Super Bowl. But Chandler's going to join us 7 teams. Is that what you said, 7 teams?
Yeah, Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, Indy, the Rams, Tampa, and then Phoenix.
And then the Rams twice, right? Played for the Rams in 2 different cities, but same franchise, yeah. I realize. But nonetheless, he's going to join us coming up about 40 minutes from now. I have never met Chris Chandler. I called him to set this up, and he was really fun. We had a fun 5-minute chat. And so we'll catch up on where he is and what he's doing now, and I look forward to that. Also, Kyle Neddenriep going to join us coming up in just a couple minutes. We'll get the slate of high school football games, Kevin Bowen. Now, I have a thing with Kevin Bowen here, not a bone to pick by any stretch. But, Jimmy, I have decided that what we're doing here, and this is a real buzzword, especially across the hall with the kids over at the news station, we're grooming here is what we're doing, right? And that's a real buzzword in today's day, I realize. But Kevin Bowen, a year ago, had a series that he did every Friday, and it was great fun, and it looks like great fun again, where his son he places his son with 2 mini helmets from afar away, and then his son has to go and pick the helmet of who's going to win that week.
The legend, Max Bowen.
That's right. Now, Max Bowen last year did this, and with pretty good success, right?
Yes.
He was a toddler, right?
Indeed.
he's now an infant, and he's grown up. He's now walking on his own. I noticed something here, though. And again, this goes to witness tampering and election tampering and things. I mean, these are all buzzwords from across the hall. But one thing that I noticed is that in the latest video, and I'm not going to spoil who Kevin's son selects, but he makes reference audibly to the Colts. He says like something about the Colts. So if he's now old enough to recognize the Colts helmet,
yeah,
and knows what he's doing here, then this takes away from the.
Didn't he publicize that last week in our visit when you asked him?
He did. But in the video, he actually he himself makes recognition or acknowledgement. He makes acknowledgement of the Colts. So now one would think that he has a coherent understanding of what's taking place.
Sure.
And I think there could be some tampering there. Now, when I worked at Channel 6, Dave First and our buddy Steve Shunk had a wonderful feline friend, Poncho, and we did, for I think 3 years in a row, we did Poncho's Picks, where this was done by whichever food bowl Poncho went with. And Poncho, I think, was 13-3. Poncho got the number one seed in the AFC.
That might
for
win a challenge in Vegas right there. Wow.
So my point being, this works out perfectly. I think we're going to enjoy one more year of Kevin's son doing this, but then he is really going to be at the age where he understands and maybe even is aware of like what goes on to the games itself. Especially if you're Kevin's kid, you have a pretty keen football awareness of all things. So that's going to work out perfectly when, a year from now, your son is going to be right at the age basically where Max was when he began doing this. It transfers perfectly, right?
Sure. If that's a baton that Max and Kevin are wanting to pass to Chance and I,
we could do a video of the actual pass of the baton, which is actually a rattle, right? But that's okay.
Exactly. But yeah, we'd be willing to take up that mantle if need be.
Now, should Max pass it to Andy's?
That's fair. It's a good point.
And then Andy's son passes it to
That's
Chance?
a good point.
That's an
Based
excellent
in
point,
order.
too.
Based
AKA
in
Little
order of
Gas?
operations, yes. Yeah.
And he is how old? So he's got to be 3 or 4 months old, right?
Little Gas?
Yes.
He's probably a year old.
He'd be next in line to the throne based on chronological order.
No, well, yeah, you're right, because it was shortly after Andy started. So you might be right.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, that would make sense because of the fact that it's the same show, and then you go. Now, the other thing that your son's going to have, Jimmy, is you're not going to have the blatant Colt bias because your son is going to be brainwashed into being a Chiefs fan,
Correct,
right?
exactly. He was brainwashed last night. Had a nice Chiefs onesie on. 1-0 in the Chance Cook
Did he soil it?
He did
Because it looked like in the fourth quarter he was trying.
He did his best, but he was able to hold off. Just kept a toe in line.
Literally, right?
Yep.
Toe on the line. It was a heck of a finish last night, and it was a very good game. Those are obviously two very good teams. If health stands for both, you have to say that in today's NFL. You just do. You would assume that those are two teams that we will be watching probably late into once the weather turns, but you never know. It's a long year, man.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the year that the Bucs were the defending Super Bowl champs, and I always reference it. I told Paul Chiodo, we were out on a story one day, and I said, Chiodo, I'm telling you, Tampa Bay, nobody's beating these guys. They're going to win 15 games and then and be the defending Super Bowl champs. The Colts went in there, they broke them on the Monday Night Miracle, and I think Tampa may have even missed the playoffs that year or come darn close. It's a long year.
An unpredictable league.
It's a very long year. The year is also underway for high school football. Kyle Neddenriep covers that, does it for the Indianapolis Star, always tells us the games that he's watching, and he will do so next. And then again, Chris Chandler, former Colt, 35 minutes from now on a Friday here. It's Query & Company, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Halfway through hour number 1 here on a Friday. My name is Jake Query. Jimmy Cook, Eddie Garrison here as well. It's Query & Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Chris Chandler about 30 minutes from now. Joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line, and appreciated his flexibility in being able to do so today at various times. But Kyle Neddenriep is with the Indianapolis Star and, of course, covers high school athletics. We're going to talk football. And then, Kyle, brace yourself because I've got a basketball question or two for you as well. But let's begin with the gridiron. The big game of the night is where?
Well, I'm going to be at Decatur Central in Whiteland, so that's the big one on my radar, at least for this week. It's kind of a week where you got a lot of really good games, maybe not the one that really shines above the rest, but I would say that's a really good one, especially in 5A, where you've got two teams that have played in the state finals the last 2 years. Decatur made it last year and lost to Fort Wayne Snyder. Whiteland made it 2 years ago. Played a classic game against Valparaiso and ended up losing in that one. So, mid-state conference teams, kind of a backyard rivalry, and it's been a game where if the winner, and I'm sure these teams probably will, could potentially meet again down the road, and they would actually meet in the sectional this year. They're in the same sectional, so. This could be the first of two meetings tonight. But, you've got that one. You've got Chittard-Roncalli is obviously always a big game on the schedule. HSE and Avon, with Avon's win over BD last week, could be good. Brownsburg-Franklin Central, that could be an interesting game. So you've got a few that are definitely good games. And Westfield, Zionsville's another one. So, some good ones out there. Pike BD, also a lot of interest I think in that game after Pike beat Fishers last week. So some really good matchups, as usual, but and just kind of maybe not the one that's like 1 versus 2 or anything like that.
Who's been the surprise team, in a positive or negative, surprise team so far?
I mean, I would say Pike. I had a chance, because of the weird schedule where, we had football Friday and then basically all day Saturday because of the storms. I got a chance to go see Pike play Fishers, and basically more than half of the game, it was, I think, 5 minutes left in the second quarter, and, Pike was leading 14-0 when that game was stopped. They come back. Fishers actually takes the lead late, and Pike ends up winning with about 20-some seconds left. But I don't think anybody saw that, that before the season coming, other than the people wearing Pike uniforms. So the fact that they're 2-0, they've really kind of, been on it's been a climb for them under Mike Brevard, and there are a lot of, I don't know if there's any team, it's telling somebody like, the elation after winning that game. I'm not sure anybody in the state was happier than they were to win that game. So now they play a different, Ben Davis is 0-2 and obviously really in search of a win. So if you speak about teams on the negative side, Ben Davis probably falls into that as far as a surprisingly 0-2 team. No one thought they would be 0-2 after winning state last year. And I think we all knew, the linebackers that graduated for them, some of the pieces they lost, starting quarterback, all those things. But you thought they definitely had enough coming back. And honestly, I think by the end of the year, I think they're going to be a team nobody wants to play, maybe even as soon as tonight. So, I don't think they're, they haven't fallen off a cliff or anything either. But, two teams that are on, when you ask that question, I think both those teams playing tonight out at Pike probably fall into that category.
Kyle Neddenriep is our guest, covers all things high school sports for the Indy Star on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. He joins us. Kyle, it's been an absolute defensive dominance performance out of the gate for Warren Central through 2 weeks. They have North Central tonight. What is it that separates Mike Kirshner's group, and why have they been so dominant on that side of the ball 2 weeks in?
Yeah, I mean, their defensive line obviously is a step ahead of just about anybody, including maybe some college teams. They're just really good on that level of defense. And then they have a lot of guys who, in the back seven who have experience as well. But when you talk about, Damian Shanklin is a LSU commit, Tyrone Burris is going to Louisville. You've got Jeremy Finch, who's a younger, Jeremy Finch Jr., who's a younger, he's only a junior, but he's got all kinds of big offers. And then Marcus Bell, who doesn't get the recognition, necessarily. He's not he's not 6'4" or 6'2" even, like some of these guys are, but man, if you watch the video, he's always in on stuff. He's always making plays up front for them. So really, it's that defensive line kind of makes things easier. But you have to have guys in the back seven who get the job done too, and they've got those guys as well. But be curious tonight. They haven't scored a point, or haven't allowed a point, I should say, this year. But North Central's a team that has put up a lot of points. Now, a lot of it's been, they're playing from behind and trying to catch up, the first 2 weeks. But Caleb Ford for them, I saw him in the scrimmage in the preseason against Noblesville, and he was impressive there. So they've got a good passing attack, and it's a totally different team than Warren played last week against Warsaw. And I'll be curious how North Central holds up front. Definitely a tough matchup for them, but that scoreless streak could be in jeopardy, I would say, against North Central's passing attack especially.
There are limited implications big picture for what I'm about to ask, because everybody gets a ticket to the dance and everybody's able to participate in sectionals and try to make a run to the state title. But it's been a minute since I remember a Central Indiana wide impact from weather the way that we had last Friday. Anybody impacted by that more so in the short term than others?
Yeah, it was weird. It was, I was at Carmel Westfield, and, I saw Andy Tebby, the Westfield AD, kind of running down the sideline. I was down there, covering the game, obviously, and didn't understand what was, even happening at the time. And then, you see the refs kind of send everybody to the locker room, and apparently it was coming. It wasn't visible to us yet, but the lightning was in the area, and then it became clear, as the night went along, what the issue was, and it was everywhere. It was like, it was Fort Wayne had it, different areas of the state were all seemed to be affected by it, and I would say, they're like you said, it doesn't really matter in the long run, as far as the records go and whatnot, but. Like a game like Decatur Central New Pal, that they weren't able to get rescheduled the following day was 21-all at halftime, and I would have been really curious to see how that game especially would have turned out. Some of them obviously did come back and play, the following day, like the game I was at with Carmel Westfield. That game kind of flipped late in the third quarter to Westfield's favor. So you wonder how some of these games would have turned out if they continued on in the same night. Where you don't have time to kind of look over 25 or 30 plays. But I don't know. It's hard to know exactly. I'd say Whiteland and Kokomo too. I was curious about how that game was also tied, and both those teams. Really good teams that like to run the ball, and so some of the games that were close, Roncalli, Franklin Central was another one. Games that were really close at halftime, how they would have ended, and maybe the momentum you take from a good win against a good team, those are things we never know, how they unfold or whatever. And then, also from a standpoint of like, your stats from those games that don't finish, end up not counting in the full stream of things. And high school stats are always so kind of unofficial sometimes anyway, but you want some, maybe some school records are affected if you don't have another game or stuff like that. I was just in my mind kind of curious about too. So there's a lot of things that are maybe not as important, but maybe in the end of the day, we don't know how it affects teams necessarily.
Hey,
but games I definitely wanted to see didn't end, and I would have liked to see how those have turned out.
Kyle, the Colts will be happy if they can get a pass rush that looks like Westfield's, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking Warren or Westfield?
Westfield.
Yeah,
because Westfield got after against Carmel, got some things done, right? Am I wrong in that?
No, definitely. Aaron Bolus had 4 sacks,
right?
And I mean, he was. And Alex is a younger brother of Gabe, and talking to him about that was like, I've always kind of been known as Gabe's little brother, but he's figuring out a way to make an impact on that side of the ball as well. And yeah, I mean, he was in the backfield, seemed like the whole night, so. I mean, that too, I thought you meant Warren because they're so good at rushing the passer too. And I always think, and maybe I'm wrong because, the spread offenses have kind of made, made it where you can get rid of the ball quicker, early, sooner and spread the field out. But man, I always think if you get a defensive line, a guy like Aaron Bolus or, Shanklin for Warren or, whatever, who can get to the quarterback, man, it's if you can dominate up front, it just makes your life so much easier, for the rest of your defense. And that's definitely what Westfield. Yeah, Westfield was big time. As far as rushing the passer, and basically ended the game on a Aaron Bolus sack too on fourth down as Carmel was driving. So, but yeah, you're definitely right. They played really well getting to the passer.
Hey Kyle, before we let you go, I wanted to the basketball recruiting periods. There are open periods and closed periods. We're, if I'm not mistaken, we are right into now a basketball recruiting period, an open period that has led to a couple of area high schools that have had kind of an all-star roster of coaches coming through, notably at Greenfield Central. If you could, let our listeners know, let's say, the top 2 to 3 recruits in the area and that are getting the most attention and maybe where you think they might be leaning.
Yeah, I mean, Braylon Mullins is definitely the number one kind of buzz about him and everything right now. And he had UConn's Danny Hurley was out yesterday, and then the day before that. And yeah, you're right. The open, the whatever you want to call it, the recruiting period where coaches can come back out just started again, and that will continue basically through the fall. There's different there's different times where the coaches can't come out, or kids and just kind of, but now it's sort where they can come back out, whether they come to watch a workout or just come talk to the kid or whatever, they can do that at this point. So he had IU, I know North Carolina is supposed to be, actually North Carolina was in, but Hubert Davis is supposed to be in early next week. As far as at last check, Tennessee was out there. Rick Barnes was out there. Michigan was there. They had Kentucky was there. So most of the schools where he's going to take official visits have had coaches out this week, and I think that kind of sends a message of, we're making you a priority. We're out here the first day. We can be, and and that's kind of the hot recruitment right now is Braylon Mullins. And yeah, I definitely think there's some reality to the UConn situation. He's already visited out there, taken an official visit, where, I was a little skeptical just because I know distance from home will ultimately, play some sort of factor in his decision. So, I thought, definitely, and still think IU's a big part of this. So, leaning, I don't want to say he's leaning, I think that's still to be determined, over these next month or 6 weeks, or probably actually closer to 2 months, really, by the time he decides. But yeah, I definitely think IU is very solidly in the mix for him. I think Kentucky is definitely in the mix for him. I think UConn's definitely in the mix for him. And then it kind of depends on how these visits go. I think UConn put themselves in a better position. He does have visits scheduled for Michigan and IU in 2 weeks. I don't have the list right in front of me, but had written about it recently. But I know he's got all these schools lined up that he's going to visit, and then kind of figure it out from there, and then basically decide after his last visit, which right now is Kentucky, I think October 26th or 7th, around there, and maybe take a little time after that and then decide. So, but yeah, he's the hot one. Then a couple other guys, Brady Kaler from Cathedral and Jalen Harrelson are headed to Notre Dame for an official visit this weekend. So both those guys are on campus. I don't know if they're there yet, but will be this weekend. I think that's something to watch out for. I think Kaler, Wake Forest has been in with him basically since the beginning of his recruitment. Also, Northwestern has very much been involved, and he's visited there already. So, he's a guy. He's about 6'9" and can really shoot it. He's kind of the type of player, that really in this day and age is kind of really a commodity. So, but I think Notre Dame's in the picture for both those guys this weekend, Harrelson and Kaler. I don't know if, commitment's imminent from either of them, but I think Notre Dame with Micah Shrewsbury's definitely become more of a factor for in-state kids now.
It'll be music to the ears of our guest in the 2 o'clock hour, Kevin Bowen, who loves Notre Dame basketball. Kyle Neddenriep will have all of the coverage for high school football, basketball recruiting as well, all at the Indianapolis Star, and kind enough to join us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Whiteland, Decatur Central, where you're going to be tonight, correct?
I will be there. Yeah, I can't wait.
All right.
Should be a fun one.
We'll be reading about it. We appreciate the time. We'll talk to you next week. All right, Kyle?
You bet. Thanks, guys.
Kyle Neddenriep of the Indianapolis Star. Chris Chandler, former Colt, 1988, third-round pick. Started and won, I believe, 9 games as a rookie for the Colts. Going to join us just under 15. Big plans for the weekend, Eddie?
I'll be going to the horse game on Sunday, and then tomorrow I've got Indiana
Colts,
Sports
by the
Talk. Yeah.
The way you said that, I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Churchill Downs, Freddie Garrison?
That's right. And you're doing Indiana Sports Talk, you said, on Saturday?
Correct.
Okay. Jimmy Cook, big plans for the weekend?
Roncalli Chatard tonight at Bob Tully Field at Roncalli High School. It's always a good, fun rivalry matchup. And then, we'll see. I don't know where the trend is, but at the very least, in the NICU with Chance and Haley, probably just hanging out with him, watching some college football in the NFL. How about you?
Okay.
Yeah, Jake. What are you doing this weekend?
I will be at a Colts tailgate from 10 until 11 at McCarty and Church, 10 a.m. I'll be there till the start of the game for the Colts game on Sunday. And, actually, I haven't been home in a while, right? So I don't know what our definitive plans are for Friday and Saturday.
Are you talking about you and Boo?
And Boo is happy that I'm home, believe you me.
Does he not know what to do with himself now that you're back? It's like I'm used to this little vacation time
I've been finding stashes of catnip around the house. It appears as though he was planning on extra shenanigans. Here's a trivia question for you guys. Jimmy, off the top of your head, name rookie quarterbacks since the Indianapolis Colts came from Baltimore. Name a rookie quarterback to start a game for the Colts.
Anthony Richardson.
Okay. Eddie?
Andrew Luck.
Jimmy?
Peyton Manning.
Eddie?
Well, obviously, I'm going to say our next guest, Chris Chandler.
That is correct. And he started 13 games in his rookie campaign. And we'll take a trip down memory lane with him and get his thoughts on what it's like to be a young player starting for the Colts at quarterback, because he might be able to give us some advice on, or perspectives, I guess I should say, on Anthony Richardson. So we'll talk to him next. Def Leppard, Jim Nance, Bob Lamey, Albert Bentley, Eric Dickerson, and the highlights of the wheels of Chris Chandler, that kind of athleticism that allowed him to play basketball, football, track, and golf in high school before going, of course, to the University of Washington and then becoming the Colts' 76th overall, the third-round pick in 1988, where he started right away, not right away, but started the predominant number of games as a rookie. He joins us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. Chris Chandler, welcome back to Indianapolis, at least via the phone lines. How are you?
I'm doing good. I kind of forgot about that one run.
Well,
those might be my only 2 rushing touchdowns in my career.
Well, we dug them up, man. What can I say, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm curious, for a guy like yourself that played, you know, you had a really long NFL career, obviously, and played for 7 different franchises, 8 different cities. So as fans and as media, Chris Chandler is this, you know, a major part of the Indianapolis Colts lore. But to Chris Chandler, does it feel that way, or is it like Indianapolis was just kind of this blip for you?
Well, it kind of was a blip because I wasn't there very long. But no, it was a really cool place. You know, the fans there are amazing. I remember the Monday night game when we beat Denver, just how crazy that place was. Yeah, that was back in the RCA Dome days. But yeah, I loved it there. Played a ton of golf with a bunch of friends and just enjoyed my time. You know, St. Elmo's got to be the best steakhouse anywhere. There's just a lot of good things that I really enjoyed about Indianapolis.
You know, it's interesting because I was talking about this earlier, Chris, and I think, you know, this will make sense. I mean, you were obviously a part of it, but it was a franchise since coming over from Baltimore that really had not found its footing. And then suddenly things, you know, after about 5 years here of really kind of league-wide anonymity and certainly a lot of struggle, things started to come together. And I felt like you were a big part of that because all of a sudden here's a young quarterback that is playing and starting, and finally the Colts had a consistent starter. They hadn't had that in Indianapolis. And just as you were getting your footing, then suddenly you're shipped off to Tampa. Now, take me through, from your perspective, just kind of the feeling of like that entire whirlwind.
Well, first of all, I think Eric Dickerson had a lot to do with that turnaround. But yeah, I mean, things were just going great. Second year, popped my ACL and I was out. And that began, you know, getting traded to Tampa and all kinds of things happening. But it was, you know, a really good, I think, for a rookie playing in the 80s when, you know, you got hit and beat on. I felt it was a really great season for the team and myself, yeah.
Were you aware that a trade was a possibility? I mean, you know, what, from a player standpoint, I guess you're always kind of looking around the corner. Hell, the same thing's true in radio, to be honest with you. But what was the beforehand? Were you kept in the loop that was going to be a possibility, or were you completely blindsided?
No, actually, I was out in Phoenix playing golf, and I saw on SportsCenter that they were going to draft Jeff George. So I didn't think I'd be there long. But that's the NFL, and that's a business side of it. But you know, off to Tampa in the orange uniform days when they didn't win much, and that was a tough place to go. But yeah, I had a feeling something was going to happen for my situation once they were going to, you know, select Jeff.
Do you remember, you know, those teams when you were there, and Eric Dickerson? I mean, that was such a. Chris Chandler's our guest, by the way, on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. The Dickerson acquisition was so surreal because of the fact that, and I know that this, I think, was the year before you arrived, but,
yeah,
you know, Indianapolis had never had a sports superstar from a football standpoint, and all of a sudden, arguably the biggest star in the league at that time is playing for the Colts, and Ron Meyer's there, and you come in, and then all of a sudden they decide for like a 3-week stretch. I'm pretty sure I didn't hallucinate this. They decided for like a month they were going to be a wishbone team. And now, what in the hell went on there?
There were some episodes of, Ricky Turner running on the field, and I'm like, what? And so, off I'd go, and, they would run a version of a wishbone, straight T, like all 11 guys within 5 yards of each other, But, back then, running backs, Eric was probably one of the biggest stars in the league, because back then running backs were as important as quarterbacks these days. So they kind of would go to this wishbone deal just randomly.
But they signed him randomly. Like my thought process is, and my recollection, and I know it's been a while, right? But my recollection is that all of a sudden one day, like the way I envision it, is you're in the cafeteria one day at the Colts complex, and Ron Meyer comes in and says, there's this guy from Washington State that ran a wishbone, and we're going to sign him and bring him in, and he's going to leave his construction job for a month, and then we're going to send him back to Washington. That, like in my mind, that's how it worked, right?
Well, it was something like that. It wasn't Ron Meyer telling me, but John Becker, who loved the guy, great offensive coordinator, he's kind of broke it to me like, this is what he wants to do, so we're going to have to work some wishbone plays in there. And he goes, don't worry, you won't be running those. So, that's kind of the way it happened. Ron had this idea of using it, and off and on he would.
How much do you today, Chris Chandler, and first off, I'd love to know, what life is like for you now. I mean, I assume you golf a lot, because I know that you were, I've followed a little bit the fact that you do a lot of golfing events, or at least you did immediately following your career. Life finds you where right now, and doing what on a day-to-day?
Right now, I'm living in St. George, Utah, which is southern Utah. We're about an hour and a half north of Vegas. So we have that desert climate, desert weather. As a matter of fact, just this morning, we abut up against the National Tortoise Reserve.
Really?
And so we had a little baby tortoise that had to been. We called the wildlife department, whatever, and it was literally the size of like a silver dollar. And the guy said, "Yeah, he's like 5 days old."
What, is it like an escapee from the reserve?
Yeah, he just hatched. Yeah, and then he waddled his way down into our backyard. But so I'm in St. George, and just spent 6 months getting my first daughter married off.
Oh, well, that's cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. That was fun. And I really haven't been playing a whole lot of golf lately. Like right now, I'm sitting out by the pool in the shade with my bulldog. Talking to you guys. I'm going to go get a little workout in after this, and I've been getting into like cooking a lot. So,
okay.
I'm going to go to the market and get some stuff and make a nice dinner, and it's just kind of relaxing, I
was going to say, life sounds good, man. So with that, in that relaxation and in between cooking and saving tortoises, do you follow the Colts much? And the reason I ask is because, Anthony Richardson, I think people are intrigued by it, and I thought you could give good perspective on what is necessary for, and I know that last year, he was here, but he got hurt. So for a young quarterback, when you have kind of the weight of a franchise on your shoulders, are you aware of it at that point? And what can we look for from Anthony Richardson that's going to tell us that things are either going well or that he's got some work to do?
Well, first of all, he should understand that he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders. When you're drafted that high, it just comes with the territory. I honestly haven't seen a lot of him. But that whole position of quarterback is decision-making and throwing the ball accurately. And it's a real small sample size of what he can do. And I know that running he's a freak when he can run like he can. But in the NFL, you got to make decisions on your health, and you got to get down and make a 15-yard run into a 7-yard run, because they are in the open field. They're going to hit you. like they did last season, and for him to have a longer, better career on the field, it's don't get hurt and just get in the film room, know where you're going to throw the football, and be accurate throwing that. On the occasion, like when I had that 29-yard touchdown run, it just like happened. You know, I was never looking to run, and I know it's a huge weapon for him, and he's got a great offensive coach that'll put him in great situations. So don't run around too much and get hurt, and just get really good at knowing where you're going to throw the football and be accurate doing it. And, I mean, sky's the limit for him.
Chris Chandler is our guest. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Chris, one of the bigger things that people talk about when it comes to rookie quarterbacks is the environment they're thrown into, the quarterback room around them, what kind of veterans that they have. For Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco is in his corner this year as he enters his de facto rookie season, but year 2 on paper. For you, it was Gary Hogeboom. How important was Gary for your development and overall for a rookie quarterback? How important is the right room and the right guys in there for overall development at the position?
Well, it sure helps. I mean, I think going to an Andy Reid or a really offensive-minded coach helps a lot as well. But, yeah, in my situation, Hogeboom just was, in my corner and giving me confidence. Like, here's what you did, but next time do this, and you're going to be better and better each week, just building me up. And now I don't know Joe Flacco at all. And I don't know what kind of guy he is. He seems like a great dude, just hearing him talk. And I would be surprised if he doesn't really help out Anthony. But it's really important, I think, for a veteran quarterback to understand it's like, hey, it's his time now, and I'm going to help him.
For Hogeboom, too, if I'm not mistaken, Chris, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was kind of Hogeboom's job, and I can't recall. Did he get hurt, and that's where you took over, or did they just decide to go with the younger quarterback, and therefore – because there are a lot of guys in that situation that may have said, look, man, my job's not to groom this guy. My job's not to help out. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
No, 100% impressive. I'm not sure how it happened. I know we lost to Houston at opening game that season. And then who did we play? And I think Trudeau started a game, and then we were up in Cleveland, and they threw me in late, and then I started the rest of the season. So, but Hoagie he just gave me confidence.
You still stay in touch with guys that you played with in Indy?
Yeah, off and on. It's more of, just being in touch with my daughters and, trying to do things with them. We had the 25-year reunion of the Super Bowl team in Atlanta, and it was really fun to go out there for 3 or 4 days and see everybody. And so, we text back and forth or make a phone call here and there. But St. George isn't like the easiest place to play.
Yeah, guys are just coming in. Dixie days are big there, right? Guys are coming in and out, right?
So, but I know there's guys who like Zion National is 45 minutes away from here. And so I know guys have threatened like, hey, we're going to come out and stay there and hike. And so, like I said, the door's always open for them. And it's always great to see all the guys. Matt Booza, and that's a blast from the past. He was my receiver my rookie year, him and Billy Brooks. I've been really tight with him and his family, and I got to see him at the wedding.
There's a dude that goes to Colts games to this day that still wears a Matt Booza jersey.
Oh, my God. Yeah. I mean, he's the greatest guy. Go Bears, Cal Bear guy. But so I'm in touch with him a lot, and some of my high school buddies and whatnot. But yeah, it's always good to see them all.
By the way, that 88 season, you are correct. Lost to Houston, then it was Chicago you lost to, and then lost at Cleveland before coming back and beating Miami at the Hoosier Dome, now the RCA Dome, and now gone altogether.
You know what? I'm so proud of that game because I'm like, it's not that I beat Marino, but I was on the team, the quarterback that beat Marino, because he is one of my idols. He's in my top 3.
Who's your top 3?
Time.
Top 3 quarterbacks all time.
Well, there's 4 actually, and I know this isn't going to rub people the wrong way, but it's got to be Montana number 1.
Okay.
Without a doubt. And then in any order you want them, it's Marino, Aikman, and Elway.
No Manning? And I realize he's younger than you, right?
Well, then after that, they're all incredible.
Right.
And just all-time first ballot guys.
Elway is one that, as time goes on, I think people forget just how darn good Elway was in terms of his ability to roll right, throw across his body, his athleticism. Pretty elite, right?
Especially playing in that era. Like when you play in the 80s and 90s, you got beat on. I didn't have 12 concussions for no reason.
Well, and I was going to say, do you worry about that? The reality is that we know, Chris Chandler, our guest, and we know about, neurologically speaking, some of the challenges that guys have faced in their post-playing career. How much of a concern is that as a former player?
Well, I guess it's always a concern. Every once in a while, like, excuse me, my ears will ring, and then I'm like, okay, well, nothing I can do about it. It's like, and that whole CTE thing,
right?
If I have it, I'm not going to know until I'm, in the box. So, it's a concern, but it's like today's a new day. Tomorrow's going to be a new day, and just do the best you can, enjoy. And I haven't noticed any weird things happening, like numbness in my extremities, just occasional weird headaches. But that happens to a lot of people. So
you referenced that '98 team with the Falcons, and that was, again, I think that was, you had, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, you had Ray Buchanan there, right? You had Rison, if I'm not mistaken. Basically half of the guys that were in the Too Legit to Quit video for MC Hammer were the Atlanta Falcons. It was the Dirty Birds, man. It was kind of, it was a big thing. You played with some real characters, both in Indianapolis and in Atlanta, I assume. Give me your best story of just personalities.
There's everywhere. There are characters, and that's the one thing, I still have dreams that I'm playing. It's like, but I don't have the game plan. It's like that nightmare thing where you're taking a test in college and you're not ready for it. But the guys, the locker room, that whole thing is what I think anybody who's played misses it. What do they say? You can take the boy out of the locker room, but you can't take the locker room out of the boy.
Did you what kind of dude was Rison, for example? Because I think you might have had him in Indy also, right?
What? He was there just my rookie year, and I couldn't, or was he? No, he was there after. He was there my second year, and I got hurt.
Okay.
So
did you not have him in Atlanta?
No. It was right after. That's when June Jones and Jeff George had that screaming match on the sideline, and they were 3-13, and then Dan Reeves came in, and that's when I came in.
Okay. And then what about in Indianapolis? There were some, I would imagine, for the Colts, a lot of people here would wonder what kind of guy Dickerson was. We didn't know him well, right? We knew he was a star, but he was almost like Jefferson in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. People are like, I think he just flies in for games, right? What kind of dude was he?
You know what? From my standpoint, being a rookie, he was extremely cool to me. I can only speak for myself. I never saw any sort of standoffishness or I'm better than you kind of attitude. And he practiced hard, and he was a great player, and he was, I thought, really cool to me.
Chris, one thing that Jake particularly loves off the field, but about NFL franchises, are throwback uniforms? I know you mentioned the creamsicles from Tampa Bay, but of all the spots you were at, what's your favorite uniform setup for them? It could be alternate, it could be traditional, but of the teams you went to, which one's your favorite?
Well, you know what I love about the Colts uniform, which is one of my favorites? It's classic, and they don't mess with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's changed. Maybe the stripes and the shoulder pads are a little shorter, and because now the jerseys are snug tight and all that, but it remains just classic. You know, maybe the face masks go from blue back to white, but they don't mess with the helmet. It's kind of like Cleveland. I just like the classics that don't change. Pittsburgh has a great uniform, but every once in a while they do those weird throwback. Looks like they're prisoners, you know.
yeah.
Those are rough. I'm telling you. Listen, your home city. I love the Seahawks throwback. Like I say, throwback. They're basically the same, but
I do. Again, growing up there, you know, I'm Jim Zorn fan and Steve Largent, Kurt Warner.
Yeah, absolutely.
But those uniforms, to me, they're just burnt into my mind that is the Seahawks uniform. You know, it's not the new ones, you know, I guess, whatever. But
do you still have any?
That's a classic one.
Do you still have any apparel that says Phoenix Cardinals on it?
I have a helmet.
Okay.
But it doesn't say Phoenix.
Right. Because you got quite a murderer's row of like iconic teams between Tampa Bay, between the Oilers, the Rams. They were in St. Louis, and then the Phoenix wrinkle there before they were just the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah,
some cool ones for sure.
It was a long and winding road, let's put it that way. But at least, you know, had a really great taste of success in Atlanta. And, you know, I still can't believe to this day we were 14-2 and didn't have home field advantage throughout the playoffs because we had to go up to Minnesota and they were 15-1. But we won that game and whatnot. But
missed field goal, right? Wasn't it a missed field goal that sent you guys to the Super Bowl?
Well, I like to say it was a made field goal that sent us to the Super Bowl. Morton Anderson, and it was, I kid you not, it was on the same end, both of them like 38, 39 yards. And when Gary Anderson missed, we all got up, you know, because we had a chance to go down and score and send it to overtime, which we did. And then Morton, like, split. You couldn't tell which upright it was closer to, the right or the left. It was dead straight down the middle. So that's actually what sent us to the Super Bowl. We kind of got lucky that Gary missed his. But
that's what it was. All right. Well, hey, Morton Anderson, the pride of Ben Davis High School, by the way, came here in Indianapolis as a foreign exchange student. And speaking of colorful characters, I had the pleasure once of meeting and interviewing Morton Anderson, and that dude was as funny as it could be, man.
Oh, he is my boy, man. He's great. He's just a great guy.
All long and winding roads end up in St. George, Utah. Did you know that? I don't know if you know that or not, but that's what I've heard.
Well, I know mine did. So it's you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a great career, and I'm happy.
Well, lastly, Chris, let me end with this because, as I mentioned kind of at the beginning of the interview, you know, when you came here, it felt like the Colts finally found some stability because you had Dickerson, and they'd made the playoffs the year before with Hogaboom and the strike year, and there were a lot of weird things going on, but.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it was
a weird season.
It was a franchise that, quite frankly, was dysfunctional up to that point. Did you get a glimpse of any of that? Did you see just kind of the Bob Irsay, just kind of free flowing nature of the franchise?
Not really. I never really saw the owner at all. And actually, fun fact: Jim Irsay at that point was like getting coffee for coaches and stuff, you know, and now he's like running the team. But I didn't, you know, as a rookie, you know, back then you got hazed at dinner. So I would I was just worrying about keeping my head down and not getting in anyone's way. And if it was dysfunctional, I didn't notice it. I just, give me the game plan. Let's play on Sunday. And, it may have been dysfunctional, but I honestly tried not to even think about what was going on around me other than just, getting ready to play.
Well, he is the pride of the University of Washington, now a Big Ten foe for Indiana and Purdue fans, odd as that may sound, but the pride of St. George, Utah, I guess now, and saving tortoises in his spare time when not sitting around with bulldogs and paying for weddings.
That's it. That's about what's been going on lately.
Well, Chris, we appreciate it. It's fun catching up with you. If you get a chance to watch the game on Sunday, enjoy watching the Colts and the Houston Texans, and maybe we'll have you back on, but I certainly appreciate the time today.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Chris Chandler, the former Colts quarterback, again, started 9 of his 13 games he started, won 9 of them as a rookie in 1988. And then, as I'd mentioned, Leon Burtonette was the offensive coordinator. Jeff George became available, and Chris Chandler was on his way to Tampa. Jimmy, the one thing that I take from that, I'm with him. I would absolutely collect all the helmets on the wall behind me, right?
Oh, absolutely. Any of the helmets, any apparel that you get from those stops. I mean, Jake, you appreciate the throwback uniforms. A lot of, like I mentioned to him, either extinct now or iconic franchises that he was a part of throughout his long career.
I mean, you should ask him to send you a picture
from right now. We
of
need
the helmets. Of the helmets.
Oh, I thought you meant just of his current scene.
Not him of being poolside with the bulldog.
Do you want to know something a fun fact about tortoises? And this is why he's a hero. I don't know if you know this or not, but tortoises they live like 100 years, right?
Sure.
They live their entire life within like a 200-yard radius of where they are born, or where they live. So if they wander off, they have to wander in a straight line walk in a straight line and walk in a straight line back. So like when you see one, for example, like crossing a road, if you're like, oh, I'm going to take it to a lake and drop it off there, it completely disorients them, and they don't have a sense of smell per se. So they spend their entire rest of their life like basically walking in a circle looking for the straight line to get back to where they came from.
Really?
So yeah, true story. So if he had one that was 5 days old, it hasn't learned the straight line yet, but he might see that bad boy again in 7 years. I have Pat Graham that played basketball at Indiana has 2 pet tortoises. He got them. He's a reptile freak. He had iguanas and everything else when we were in college. And he has 2 large tortoises, and he's told me he has it like in his will what happens with them upon his passing, because they're going to live. He's like,
right.
He's like, that's the only pet I got, Jake, where I didn't think about the fact that it's going to live 70 years after me.
Now, are the tortoises the dependents on the life insurance policy? How does that work? Are they
right?
named in that?
I mean, who knows, right? Here's the thing about you got to be careful with the tortoises when it comes to insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a shell game for them.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm. See what I did there, Eddie? I love it. Bouncing back with a little 88 hit here, Eddie.
I guess.
Now, what's the signature song for Guns N' Roses? We've had this debate before, right?
No, I don't think we have.
What do you think? Is that it?
I don't know. This wasn't.
Jimmy, you going Sweet Child of Mine?
Yes.
You going Paradise
Yeah.
City? You going Welcome to the Jungle? You going November Rain?
It's between Sweet Child of Mine and Welcome to the Jungle for me.
The intro to Sweet Child of Mine is, without question, I think the most immediately recognizable, but Welcome to the Jungle, because of sports, is way up there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when people think Guns N' Roses, they think Sweet Child of Mine. When people think like football game, they think Welcome to the Jungle.
Yes.
When people think of Paradise City and somehow falsely attributing it to the fact that I said on the radio once that it was about Bloomington because I grew up with Axl Rose, which somehow that got on the internet that I said that, and I never said I knew Axl Rose. That's what they think of with that song. We have Colts news to report. Is that correct, Eddie? And by the way, thanks to Chris Chandler. I'm seeing if Chris Chandler can send us a picture of all of his helmets, by the way. But appreciated that interview, and yes, we will continue to do that each week with a former player. Eddie, in terms of who is in and who is out for the Colts matchup with the Houston Texans, let's get to that. What can you tell us?
We know who is out. That would be Josh Downs, wide receiver. As for Matt Gay, there is no clarity yet in terms of which he will be, if he will be in or if he will be out. He was not ruled out today. So there is a chance that he could be kicking for the Colts in 2 days.
Quick question from a poor taste, fair taste standpoint. If Matt Gay plays on Sunday with all this roller coaster we've just gone through of, is he healthy? He's missing kicks. Why is he missing kicks? Is it because he's still hurt? Oh, he's hurt. Oh, it's a groin. Oh, well, it's not a groin, it's a hernia. Oh, and he had surgery on it, by the way. If he plays on Sunday and he struggles, who is to blame? Is Matt Gay to blame?
That's a great question.
Are the Colts to blame because they're like, hey, go out there, you're good? Who is to blame if he struggles on Sunday? I don't even mean they lose the game because of it. I mean him individually, he struggles. Because if it was me, I wouldn't even roll the dice with it.
The question then becomes, is the onus on the player or the staff?
Right.
The staff being the coaching staff or the medical staff?
I think both.
Yeah, the medical. I mean, I think partially it's on Matt Gay because the staff, be it medical or coaching, has to go. They can only go on what they see. It's up to Matt Gay to be honest about what he feels. And only Matt Gay knows whether or not he is going through something from a pain threshold tolerance standpoint that alters the way that he is able to kick or the accuracy with which he's able to kick. Right?
Yes. I'm just, and maybe it's on myself. I'll take the blame on it. I've not reached out to try to get a hold of medical experts. But again, if it's hernia surgery, and I know it can vary based on the type of hernia and perhaps how in-depth the procedure is, but like I would have thought at least a week in terms of missed time.
Right.
The idea that they're saying he's progressing well, this is a quote from Steichen, from our guest at the top of the hour, the 2 o'clock hour, Kevin Bowen at KBowen 1070. More Steichen on Matt Gay, quote, he's feeling good, he's progressing well, we'll make that decision when we need to make that decision. Well, the time to make that decision is upcoming, and forget the long term, which is what I talked about last week, Jake, about how you know what happened with Vinatieri a couple of years ago where confidence galore and we believe in our kicker and it's fine and it cost them games. Forget about the long-term ramifications here with this being a long saga with Matt Gay this season. We know about the 10-game winless streak in openers. We know about wanting to get off to a good start because there's twists and turns on this schedule that could make the thin margin for the Colts making the playoffs shrink even more. And the idea that you're having this conversation, the Colts are internally, of, well, maybe he'll go, maybe he won't, when at least Spencer Schrader is healthy and had a pretty good camp in preseason. And it's also clear, we talked to J.J. Stankovich yesterday, that the Colts aren't moving away from Matt Gay. This would just be a temporary thing. I don't get why it's a conversation even being entertained. There's nothing to be gained from him being out there unless he is truly medically cleared. And the other side to this coin is that I just don't. There's no gamesmanship here. This isn't, the star wide receiver may or may not play, and so they're keeping the coordinators up at night. That's not happening.
Right.
The Texans are not worried about Matt Gay. Like, they're not like, we got to change our game plan now because Matt Gay's playing. This isn't traditional injury bug gamesmanship. I wouldn't play him. I would not play him this weekend, just
especially
on the principle
because,
of it.
I mean, here's the thing. If Matt Gay plays and he is 100% fine, but of course you don't know that, right? If he's 80% and you say let's go with it because an 80% Matt Gay is better than a 100% other choice.
Maybe Spencer Schrader, right? That's your ultimate decision there.
And I thought Schrader was good in the Bengals game, but if you're doing that, okay, fine. But if he's anything other than that, and there is a microcosm of chance that you are furthering the injury or delaying the 100% recovery, then you go with Schrader.
It's a non-starter.
Right? I mean, what are the odds? I shouldn't say that because we've seen it before. I was going to say, what are the odds truly that the game is going to come down to a kick anyway? Well, I mean, it may.
I
mean, we saw how many games. The problem is this. Again, the key word here, precedent. I always go to precedent, right? The precedent in this town with this team in terms of the modern installment of it is, and I know Matt Gay is not the age that Adam Vinatieri was, but late in that last year, everybody on the planet, I remember being at my cousin Chris's house for a get-together, and the Colts are on the road, and so we got the Colts game on, and my mom is like, well, he's not healthy, right? And he's missing kicks. I mean, everybody knew that he wasn't healthy, except for, theoretically, the Colts staff and Vinatieri. They were, like, insistent that there was no problem. It cost them multiple games. So, and that was an age thing. I mean, the guy's the greatest kicker of all time. That was simply, his body just finally broke down. But the point being, there is a lesson to be learned about standing by a kicker for too long. If it's starting to go awry, you've got to either move on or get him healthy. And in this case, it's not move on, but he did miss kicks a year ago, which
Correct.
Isn't a big deal except for that he was being paid like a guy that's not going to miss kicks for you.
It was supposed to be you're paying a premium for a set-it-and-forget-it starter that is going to be near the top of the league like he was his most recent season in L.A., and he wasn't that, and he struggled. And to that end about decision-making and confidence in a kicker costing you, like you can say, oh, well, that was Vinatieri, it's a special circumstance. What the Colts are still selling on Matt Gay is the same vote of confidence and belief in him, to the point that most of the same players, aside from Shane Steichen and his staff, most of the same players that were around that backed Vinatieri with blind ignorance are still there. Ballard's still there. Irsay's still there. Like, so if you didn't learn anything from that lesson and you're going to put him out there.
Has he practiced?
I don't think so.
I don't believe
that
so.
right there tells me no way.
Yeah, I don't.
Right?
I'm in the boat. I don't think he's playing. I get it. Maybe this is just, it's not real gamesmanship because, again, it's not affecting the game plan of the Houston Texans. But maybe the Colts are wanting to be intentionally vague, and he's going to wind up not playing this weekend.
Do you remember when the Colts kept
two
kickers on the roster all year just so they had one to kick off and one to kick field goals?
Yeah.
I remember that, yeah.
Danny Kite, right? Strictly a kickoff specialist. Yeah. Imagine if you flubbed that.
There were other teams that did it too.
That literally is the perfect, like you had one job, right?
Yeah. You brought up earlier, though, is this a close game? Like, I realize this isn't a big limb I'm going out on. This is just how I see the game going. Either the Texans win comfortably or it does come down to one possession. And it matters. Like last night, from a momentum standpoint, I'm not saying the entire complexion of the game changes, but Justin Tucker, who is viewed by many as the greatest active kicker still playing, misses a field goal last night.
Yeah.
And like he was perfect inside of 30. I think he's never missed inside of 30, which is an incredible stat in of itself, but he misses from 50. And
he struggled from 50 last year. I think he was like 1 for 5.
He did. He had a step back last year, but reliability in a kicker, especially in a tight division race where you feel like If you're the Colts, you feel like the margin between you and the Texans is as small as the drop that cost you the division last year. You feel like you're right there. And so when I envision Sunday, it's either the Texans are able to get separation and they win comfortably, or this is a toss-up right down to the wire, and every point, every possession is going to matter. And that includes not having confusion or wishful thinking about your kicker.
By the way, he has kicked this week.
Okay.
So Shane Steichen did clarify that he has kicked this week. So, but again, I go back to if there's any chance that he can delay being 100%. I mean, if they say he's 100% and he says he's 100%, then you got to go with it.
Sure.
I get that. But if there's any chance that you could delay it, then I think you go ahead, because it looks like they do have somebody that I think can.
Yeah, it's not like Schrader looked incompetent.
Correct. It's not like me when I had the $1 million kicks for the Hershey contest back in 1996.
Here's my question to you two. Does this speak more of their confidence in Matt Gay than it does their confidence in Spencer Schrader?
They love Matt Gay. There's no question about that.
I mean, Schrader's a career 68% field goal kicker in college.
I know, but
it's not like he was an accurate kicker in college either.
But his last year at Notre Dame was solid. It was a career year for him. Like he did struggle. Kevin outlined that, but his last year at Notre Dame, his numbers, drastically speaking, aren't that different from a percentage standpoint that Matt Gay had a year ago. But to that question, Eddie, I think it's pretty clear from everybody we've talked to that is labeled Colts employee that the Colts believe in Matt Gay, perhaps in the same regard they did at Vinatieri. And I don't know if that's because of the amount they're paying him or because they just have this strong belief that last year was an anomaly and he is one of the great kickers currently in the National Football League. But, Jake, you're exactly right. Regardless of where I might feel about the accuracy issues of Matt Gay or how the whole thing is weird of how much of the misses last year were because he was hurt, how much of it was a mental struggle, and how much of it was just, he didn't play well. All of that gets thrown by the wayside if you roll the dice in week 1 with him and he further gets injured.
Here's the good news.
Because then you are with Spencer Schrader.
Here's the good news. The good news is this. The good news is that it is week 1 of the NFL season. The Colts are hosting the Houston Texans at Lucas Oil Stadium, and our two biggest concerns are whether or not the kicker's healthy and the roof works. It's not about whether or not your quarterback is going to be able to come back from shoulder surgery. It's not about whether, and I know Josh Downs, we're waiting for him to come back, and he's going to be an important piece for them, but we know what he can do. It's not about, we have seen so many other off seasons where if I hear the word subluxation again, I'm going to drive into a bridge abutment.
Subluxation.
Thank you, Eddie. But the point being, all told, their health report card is pretty good.
Yeah.
If this is what we're going to, can we please just go back to, we're literally a healthy kicker away from going back to just simply complaining about the fact that there shouldn't be a debate whether or not the roof's open, except for that they forgot to put in any sort of a drainage system. So if there's one rain cloud somewhere over Marion, Illinois, you can't actually have the roof open on Sunday. But it's supposed to be sunny and 71.
I still have a couple other concerns.
Why is this a discussion?
I still have a couple other concerns, but they don't go towards where the roof is at.
All right, we'll get them next. So, Jimmy Cook, you said that you do have a few concerns when it comes to the Colts that do not relate to their kicking situation or a roof that keeps getting jammed, right?
Yeah,
You say roof or roof. Which are you?
I think I'd go roof.
Eddie?
Roof. Like
that might be the first time we've all been unanimous.
I think
on
I'm a roof
tomato,
guy.
tomato.
I
Okay,
think
never
I'm
mind.
roof.
Sorry. Pump the brakes. My fault. Not
No.
unanimous.
I can, tomato, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, as you were.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the fact that it's great that there's not a ton of health concerns around the quarterback, but that's still where the conversation starts, is not the health necessarily going into week one, but it is the overall lack of experience for Anthony Richardson, him getting reps, and the accuracy issues still being there. We saw that in the preseason finale against the Bengals. You saw it at times for every flash of greatness that he's had in those 4 games and the way he pops throughout his film at Florida. There are these areas and lapses with errant throws or miscommunications or pick sixes, and that is still an area of concern for me. I think Houston is, while they still have issues defensively, the Texans, in a lot of ways, want to be able to make his life miserable, especially getting after the quarterback, and he's going to have to make informed, quick, decisive decisions that are demandative of that position. We mentioned it last night, or in regards to our recap last night, with Lamar Jackson. And I know there's instant parallels between Anthony Richardson and Lamar Jackson because of the fact that they are dual threat quarterbacks that can beat you both their arm and their legs. But there's going to be moments throughout this regular season, and especially against Houston, if it winds up being the shootout I think it's going to be, where he's going to have to be pinpoint accurate. He's going to have to be decisive and quick. And there is reason to think, not that the protection won't be there, I'm very confident in the offensive line, but that with where this receiving room is and finally having him back there, is it immediately a fine-tuned machine? Or, Jake, as you outlined it with the beast analogy of this being my trademark, the Richardson roller coaster, does it start out low and shaky out of the gate against Houston? Is he accurate out of the gate, or are there those struggles? That's still a real concern for me.
I go back to, I think with Richardson, it's going to be one of those years where you're going to have games where you're like, let's go, and then games where you're like, what in the world?
I think you've said it before, drives probably like that within the games themselves.
You're right.
Like, take, for example, the way the Bengals game started.
Lamar Jackson's a multiple MVP, or multiple-time winning MVP, and yet last night you saw there were some throws where you're like, what is he doing? And other plays where he looked out of this world, right?
You also have to remember, Houston is one of the few teams that saw Anthony Richardson last year, so
sure,
they know what to expect.
That's true.
Not a lot of these other teams do.
I'm also, this isn't really a concern as much as it is how do the Colts balance it? Matt Taylor brought this up yesterday. Jonathan Taylor had his way with the Texans last year.
He's had 140 or more rushing yards in 4 straight games.
And the question becomes, where is the balance between exploiting that, if that's still something you can, and turning Richardson loose? Where's the balance between passing game and riding the hot hand that has been Jonathan Taylor in these matchups against Houston?
What DEFCON do we go to if Anthony Richardson gets hurt on Sunday?
Which way is the scale? It's low. It's like 4 is it 4 the highest?
Yeah. Well, which one are we on? He's not going to be. Don't worry. But I'm just saying,
DEFCON 5 would be the highest.
Is it? Okay.
So we
5.
go to DEFCON 10, right?
Yeah. 5 times 2.
Okay. Did you get a hold of Kevin, Eddie?
Which Kevin?
Bowen.
Yes.
Is he joining us today?
Yes.
What time?
90 seconds.
Okay. Let's do that. Colts and Texans at Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday. Looks like it's going to be a spectacular day. And we shall see if it's a spectacular start for the Colts. Last night, the NFL season getting underway with the Ravens and Chiefs doing battle at Arrowhead. Went down to the wire. Very good game. And as we talked about earlier, that was a game to me that showed that you got to have players in space. You got to have speed. That's the way the NFL is now. It's been that way for a while, I realize. Kevin Bowen joins us now from, of course, the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy. You hear him every morning from 7 until 10 on this radio station. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. Kevin, I feel like the Colts, certainly from a coaching standpoint, schematically can get guys in space. Question is, do they have the personnel and the speed? They have addressed that theoretically with A.D. Mitchell, with Josh Downs once he comes back, maybe Jonathan Taylor if they can get him out as well. But do you feel they have the number of weapons necessary in today's NFL?
Yeah, I don't know about the full weapons, but I think they've certainly made a concerted effort to improve their speed. You know, with going back to Taylor, I guess, certainly Richardson at quarterback, and then if you want to look at wideout, you know, Alec Pearson, A.D. Mitchell, and run some pretty fast 40-yard dash times. You know, Anthony Gould, their fifth-round pick out of Oregon State. So, yeah, I think speed probably isn't necessarily as big of an issue. But, you know, weapons can come in different shapes and sizes. And so I don't know, full-on one-on-one guys, can they just win religiously at wide receiver? Frankly, I just don't know if Baltimore and Kansas City, you could argue, most of that stuff is really schematic with what they do, and obviously super explosive quarterbacks that help them out in that area. But, again, one-on-one guys, Kelsey's not the fastest, but he's made such a career at getting open and making plays like that. So that'll certainly be a big, big question this season. Chris Ballard, I know, is pretty bullish on what he's got at pass-catching positions, and we'll see it all play out.
Kevin, you were at the complex today. Shane Steichen, I believe, addressed the media today. So give me the cliff notes on what we learned, if anything new today, and what came out of it as we get set now for week number 1.
Josh Downs is out. Matt Gay is questionable. Shane Steichen said Matt Gay did kick. For what it's worth today, we did not see that part of practice. So, yeah, I guess we'll have some sort of potentially game time decision at kicker. I'm probably still in the camp of like a hernia injury for a kicker that had surgery like 7 to 10 days ago. Doesn't sound like something you should probably force, but we'll see. Matt Gay, for what it's worth, even yesterday at practice, he was doing some, kicking motions at least. Again, he didn't kick in front of us, but, it's not like he was confined to only being on the sideline or, any sort of, whatever, crutch or limp situation. So, yeah, that would be the one to watch now as we wait the final injury report and then, get closer to kickoff. But, yeah, Josh Downs out. He was doing some, I would call it pretty aggressive sprinting and cutting off to the side. But, again, it's 4 weeks removed from that high ankle sprain. And 4 to 6 weeks is the thought on that. So his availability now will transition into next week.
Kevin, maybe my football IQ is not strong enough to properly dissect this, but to your point, I don't understand what they're doing with this Matt Gay runaround, because I can't think of what is significantly gained by him playing on Sunday. I mean, I guess if he's fully 100%, medicals, everything is on the up and up, then okay, I guess you're getting the kicker that you hope he is, which is the accurate one in Los Angeles. But if he's anything but that, he struggles, let's say, and it costs them drives, costs them points, costs them the game maybe. He gets re-aggravated with the hernia, and then he's out longer. I know Spencer Schrader isn't, he's not Adam Vinatieri, but at least he looked competent to the point that they feel comfortable with activating him or having him around the practice squad and having him as a backup option. Why the runaround here with the Matt Gay situation? What is at stake? What's to be gained by him playing on Sunday?
Yeah, I largely agree with everything you just said, Jimmy. Congrats on your Chiefs last night as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't imagine D'Amico Ryans is, tapping his wife on the shoulder at 3 a.m. and saying, "Gosh, I just can't. I don't know if Matt Gay's going to kick."
Right.
I mean,
That's what I said. It's not
might
like
as well
Josh
not get on
Downs.
the plane.
Yeah, you're not losing sleep over it, right?
Yeah, D'Amico Ryans can name Spencer Schrader. That's probably a miracle. So, yeah, I don't really get it either. I think you bring up a good point of, this isn't Matt Gay dealing with a shoulder injury or, what I guess I'm thinking upper body of the kicker, like, something along those lines where the aggravation factor maybe wouldn't be there, or the worry about, even if he just can't kick his, normal distance, it's one thing to make extra points. It's another to make, 52, 55, whatever Justin Tucker missed last night, 53 or however long that was. So, yeah, it's a bit head-scratching to me. Certainly, I think kicking matters a whole lot in the NFL, and games are often decided, by one possession. But still, this looks like, a guy in a 17-week season that all of a sudden, if the hernia becomes a little bit more nagging, then, can you turn a 1-week absence into a 1-month absence? That doesn't sound like something that is ideal. So, yeah, it's a little head-scratching to me. And frankly, I think some of the Matt Gay overall usage and, how much is the injury impacted is misses here in the month of August, or I guess last month now, all of it, I think it is a little confusing.
Kevin, did you ever watch the television show? Kevin Bowen is our guest. Did you ever watch the TV show Succession?
Not religiously, no.
Okay, nor have I, but, obviously just the word alone, what theoretically it's about. We had, and this is an important matter we need to discuss here. So,
by the way, you called me at like 12:23 today, and I answered,
you called
and
me.
I heard nothing.
You called? No. Hold on. I've got it right here. I have a missed call from you at 12:23 p.m. As a matter of fact, I'm going to.
If you guys miss each other
Jimmy?
so much, you can meet up, have lunch.
Kevin,
or
this
I guess
is the
dinner.
second time this has happened. So what does it say right there? What's the top of my phone say?
So it says Kevin Bowen 1223. However, Kevin Bowen is red, indicating that he had tried to call Jake, being a missed call.
Yes. So I have
but
a
I
missed
bet it
call
looks
from
the
you
same
as well.
way on Kevin's device, and this weird mystery continues.
No. Siblings running the bomb to explain who was wrong in the first place. I will send the screenshot to you guys right now. So
I think you both have the same screenshot.
Hello. I thought you guys were in your first break. I got nervous. I was hoping everything was okay.
It's very weird,
you
man.
Made a run to the studio, so good to hear everything was
very
okay.
weird. Okay, but here, so around that time is when I was mentioning this. I saw, and I enjoy, and you will do it over the course of the year, the videos that you are now doing for year number 2 of your son selecting the weekly winner based on picking a helmet, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I don't want to divulge who he picked this week because I want people to be able to go and watch it and feel the suspense. But I did notice, now that he is talking, I did notice that he is aware of who the Colts are, correct?
Yeah, I think he knows 3 helmets. He knows Colts. I think he knows Lions, and then he thinks the Bengals are the Tigers.
But does he kind of like the Colts?
Well, yeah, that's a fair question. I think we're going to learn if Vegas all of a sudden starts realizing there's a bias involved. We could be really out the way. We could be done by week 4.
So as we know, Jimmy is now a father, right?
Indeed.
So too is Andy, and Andy's son would be how old?
Boy, I think he's I think he just turned 1, actually.
So do we need to do a secession here? If it appears as though there is, unfortunately, a bias within your son that is altering the legitimacy of these picks, do we need to do a secession plan where we then go to Andy's son and then he carries the torch until Chance Cook is ready to go, who doesn't know anything about the Colts because everything in their house is red and yellow anyway?
Big first win for Chance last night. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's a little different than Max Bowen watching Notre Dame Marshall as his first game. I forget. I don't even. Jay texted me and said congrats on the kid. I think he said congrats on Marshall. So yeah, it's probably a fair point. And we were in panic mode the other night. I had set out the Colts and Texans mini helmets out on the kitchen table because I like Max to get used to it. I want the science experiment to be. again, as little bias as possible. So get used to the helmets and, act like they're his toys for a couple days or so. We've misplaced the Colts helmets. So now, we're in full panic mode. All the helmets to misplace. You need that one for 17 weeks out of the year. So I had to dial up my nephew, borrow his Colts helmet here. And I could be ordering a Un Colts mini helmet unless we can somehow clean the house and find it. So, yeah, it's a major question. As I said to my wife, we very well could be with some bias here. But, who knows? Maybe the Colts go 17-0, and maybe he'll pick the Colts every week.
Kevin, do you find in talking, with the Colts and just getting ready for this game, now that we've shifted to it being a game week, do you find that the Colts discussion or do you get the impression that it's been more about them, just trying to fine-tune who they want to be, or is it more about looking at Houston's areas of vulnerability and trying to attack those?
Yeah, I would say now that you're in this week, I'd say definitely the latter. Houston is without their version of Zaire Franklin on Sunday and Christian Harris, their leading tackler. That is a big deal. Again, imagine the Colts not having, that type of player. I thought it was really interesting. We had John McClain on our show yesterday, and he mentioned that Houston will have just 2 of the same 11 defensive starters they had for Week 18, none of them in the front 7. So, again, it's a very new-look defense. Now, again, Houston would argue they've upgraded in some areas, but, when you factor that in, certainly that allows for Shane Steichen, you would think, to say, okay, how can we, force more communication on them and force them really to, all be on the same page. Their offensive line is not a group that's played a ton of snaps together intact either. So, I think you have now transitioned into the, all right, personnel-wise, how are you defending them? Certainly, Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs is not your average wideout core in the NFL. So, yeah, that is a big deal, and moving Latu around and not just having them simply rush off the left side like he did extensively throughout the preseason. All of those things are, I think, very much alive and well for the Colts.
Kevin Bowen is our guest. You hear him on the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy, 7 to 10 a.m. on these very airways. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter all throughout the Colts season at KBowen1070 and find his work on 1075thefan.com. Kevin, when I look at the Texans receiving core, I know you highlighted it there, but Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Robert Woods in this second act of his career, even John Mechie. There's still a lot of hype surrounding what he can be. It's as good a wide receiver core as you're going to find in the National Football League. If the pass rush does not get home for the Colts on Sunday, are they doomed? Like, is it all come down to them winning in the trenches in terms of getting stops, or is there reason to believe that this secondary led by Juju Brents can pick up slack if need be?
Your pass rush doesn't get home, you are doomed. You are an 0-1 football team going to Lambeau. I think no questions asked. If you look at last year's 2 matchups with Houston, it's pretty wild, the discrepancy in how much they did pressure, hit, sack C.J. Stroud in the win down there in Week 2, and then how they did not do that in the loss in Week 18. Again, if you want to look at it, Houston, the Colts were questioning secondary. In Houston, they're questioning their offensive line. Well, how do you disrupt the timing of Stroud? How do you hit Stroud? Well, you obviously beat their defensive line or beat their offensive line, and that is their question mark. And on paper, the Colts have an area of strength there. So, that is it's easily, to me, the most vital component of any sort of blueprint to victory. And I think, not to nerd out over numbers, but I think it's the deepest wideout room in the NFL, kind of 1 to 3, you mentioned some of the 4 and 5 names even. Dalton Schultz is, I think, much more than a serviceable tight end. If you look at it last year, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell, now again, Diggs is in Buffalo, all 3 of them caught at least 7 touchdowns, and all 3 of them had 100 yards in at least a trio of games. So I know those are a bit arbitrary numbers, but, they had big games, and they got in the end zone frequently. The Colts haven't had a wideout do that since T.Y. Hilton a decade ago, and Houston had 3 guys, or they have 3 guys on their roster now that did it last season. I think there are only like 15 players, 15 or 20 that did it in the entire league last year. Now 3 of them are on the opposing sideline come Sunday. So, yeah, I mean, as much as you want to be mano a mano and, you know, Julian Blackman and Kenny Moores and the Juju Prince of the world would disagree with what I said, I just think you have to have it from your front. And if you can speed that clock up, if you can disrupt timing in any way, shape, or form, if you can just do some of that, I think that can go a long, long way. It doesn't have to be the outright sacks. You know, I know we fall in love with that stat, and obviously it is a stat that matters, but, you know, consistent pressure. If you look at what our playoff teams and what do they have on their resume at the end of the year, consistent pressure, particularly late in games. You saw it from the Chiefs last night. That's what wins.
Kevin Bowen joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Kevin, we talked about this last segment. Eddie Garrison tweeted it out about 7 minutes ago, but Jonathan Taylor, his career game log against the Houston Texans, 91 yards, 83 yards and a touchdown, 145, 2 touchdowns, 143, 2 touchdowns, 167, a touchdown, 188, a touchdown. He has pretty much had his way with the Houston Texans throughout, especially last season. You mentioned all the changes that the Texans have had defensively this offseason. Is it as easy for Jonathan Taylor on the ground on Sunday?
Well, I think there's reason to say yes. I mean, I was talking to Taylor yesterday in the locker room, and I was like, you know, I feel like I watch Wisconsin football, and, you know, at times I thought Jack Cohn probably moved as fast as I did watching him at Notre Dame. I'm like, you've never had a quarterback like Richardson. I mean, never had anything close to that from a run threat. And he, you know, pretty much agreed with that, whether it was in college or whether it's been here with the Colts. So, again, that element we saw for 2 snaps last season. What does it look? I mean, Taylor ran for 188 with Minshew in Week 18. What does that look like now? And I think the other thing to add, too, and we debated this morning, and Jimmy, this is right in your wheelhouse. Right now, the Vegas over-under for Jonathan Taylor rushing yards on Sunday is 73.5. I think if you presented that to DeMeco Ryans, he would say, hand me the Sharpie marker and show me where to sign. If you handed that to Shane Steichen, I think Steichen would say 73. Not terrible, but I think Steichen would say, you know, I think we can easily eclipse that mark. And obviously Richardson's presence probably plays into some of that number being where it is. But still, I think the Colts view it as, given the Texans' history, I don't think Taylor's ever had less than 80 yards. And I don't know, maybe you just said it there with Eddie's numbers. I don't think he's ever had less than 80 in a game against Houston. So, you know, I did a Houston radio hit yesterday with our ESPN affiliate down there, and, you know, they fear Taylor, I think, as much as probably Colts fans fear kind of the passing game entering Sunday. So, yeah, it is it is something that I think you almost expect. And I know that you might be taking it for granted, but there's plenty of reasons, I think, to kind of feel that confidently about Taylor and his production.
Kevin, I don't understand this. I'm looking at this right here, and we'll probably live to, well, I mean, I'll live to like 60, but before we get this figured out. Now, at 12:20.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, by the way. 52 doesn't quite have the umph of 50. I mentioned that you and Mark knocked it out of the park for me at 50, which is I will always be grateful for.
Sure.
So, 12:23 p.m. Here's a screen grab that you show. That says that you had an incoming call from me, and it says 10 seconds. So I assume that that's 10 seconds of you going, hello, right? Understandable.
Hello 3 times, walked to the back of the Colts media room. I think I even whispered Jake. Brett Bensley's looking at me.
Okay.
Casey Valier's looking at me. Yeah, it was was awkward.
That's an incoming call at 12:23. Now, I just sent you a screen grab for myself. From 12:23, I have a missed call from Kevin Bowen. So, now, the only thing that I
sounds
can
like a conspiracy to me, Eddie.
Well, here's the thing. The only thing I can think on this, of the two of us, only one of us is related to somebody that works at the Apple store, correct? Kevin, is your father still working at the Apple store?
He hung it up a little over a year ago. So, yeah, he is retired.
Okay.
I don't know if this is the ghost of Brad Bowen's past, but yeah.
I think the IT folks at Apple are having fun at the with your dad, maybe. I don't know. But we got to get to – this is very odd to me. I find it alarming.
I think it's because Jake has the iPhone 12. I think that's what it is.
Kevin, which iPhone do you have? These guys get on me because I'm not like cool and I didn't wait in line for an hour and a half to get some phone that I can get for 40% the same price 2 days later.
You've gotten on me for doing that. You've gotten on me for doing that, but you've never. I've never gotten on you for having an iPhone 12.
No, you guys openly mocked me. Which iPhone do you have, Kevin?
Now you're making stuff up.
I believe I have the 14, 15, something like that. Yeah, I think I've got one of the. I have the one that you need the different charging cable.
Yeah, so you.
Yeah, that's what I have.
No, you need. He
Yeah,
needs
he's
USB-C.
got the different one.
Kevin has a different one. It's okay. It's fine. I don't want to do this. We're gonna get too techie.
Well, I will say that what's really eerie, and it's not like Jake and I are sitting laying on the pillows calling each other every night. It's not like we are communicating on a constant basis.
Uh-huh.
I find it very eerie that this has happened. If I'm not mistaken, the previous time it happened was also on a Friday when we do have these 2:00 chats. So that is a bit odd. I thought you were in a crisis when you called me earlier.
It used to happen with the station number.
I know the station used to call me all the time when I was on the air as well.
And now it's you.
So you think it's?
I think last time it was mid-segment. I think it was like right now, This reminds me of a college story.
Okay.
I don't know if I should say it out loud, but here we go. I went out on a date with said girl in college. I thought we had a nice time. Next day, get together with some of my buddies. We're there watching football. Next thing you know, I look down at my phone and said girl is calling me. I mean, we're talking, 2 in the afternoon after, previous night date. And, it was a little embarrassing in front of the guys watching football here. I go excuse myself, get to the front porch. I do the same thing I just did with your call. Hello, nothing. I'm like, oh, boy, that's awkward. Go back inside. They're like, what? I'm like, I don't know. I think it was a butt dial or something. 10 minutes later, look down, caller ID. She's calling again. Go outside, do the same thing. It's awkward. Walk back in. They're burst out laughing. They have an app on their phone that can somehow do this.
Really?
Now, this is 12 years ago.
So one of these two culprits, I'm telling you, it's either one of these two guys sitting right here or it's Andy.
Whoa.
J&B wouldn't have the ability to do that. He's not.
No.
It's got to be one of the younger guys.
Yeah.
Now hold on. Now, lastly, before we let you go, so when I get a new iPhone, which I don't know why I would, this one works. Apparently, maybe this is the issue. Then maybe that's why I need a new one. I've got to get all new charging cables again. All new accessories again.
Oh yeah, that's where Apple gets you. I mean, they're.
So why would I get a new phone if this one works fine? Other than occasionally getting that glitch.
And I had to buy the charger. It's not like they gave me a charger with the phone. Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, I should sit here and praise Apple, and my dad loved his time there, but no, place stinks.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so full coverage coming up on Sunday. Colts and Texans. You can, of course, hear about it on Monday with Kevin and Andy. You can read Kevin's work as well on the Fan, the Podcast Center, etc. Kevin, we appreciate it. Enjoy the weekend, all right?
Jimmy, congrats. Yes, thank you.
Thanks,
Have a great
Kevin.
Weekend.
You too. Go Irish.
So let me see your charging thing here, Jimmy.
It's just the port's different. The cord, that's a lightning cable.
Right.
That's charging yours. A USB-C cable, which charges MacBooks, charges mine.
Okay.
See, you're glad we did that now?
Yeah, I really feel like I'm missing out here.
I have never, to be fair.
And I'm not saying you have to get the brand new one. I'm just saying a little bit more.
No. I want to clarify this. I want to separate her in the sand. That's Eddie Garrison speaking. I have never once, I might have called you technologically inept. I've never once mocked your iPhone.
I haven't mocked. I just say he has the iPhone 12. That's it. I don't know if you consider that mockery or not.
I think tone does a lot there.
Michael just tweeted me, I'm 52 and I've got the iPhone XS.
Oh, my. I don't even know. What year did that come out? I'm fascinated.
17? 18 maybe? I don't care, to be clear.
I do think that, and honestly, I do think that the thirst for the latest model of technological things, there is one. That's one of the areas where there is a generation gap.
And
because
I might
my
not
age, I think more often than not are like, who cares?
I've told you this is the first year in a long time. The upgrades that appear to be ready for the next iPhone don't appear to be that game changing to the point I might sit it out this year. I haven't done that in a while, but I might.
What does your phone do that mine doesn't?
It has a better camera, better battery life. It processes things faster. And as I told you, this fun handy dandy. There's There's a side
Apple Watch?
No, there's a side action button on the phone that will automatically open up any app that you set it to open up without having to click the app. You just hold the button and it opens up. Anybody want to take a guess what app I have to open up? All I got to do is press that button. Eddie, you know what it is.
I do.
All right. It's a sportsbook app.
I was about to say that.
I can't tell you how annoying it is to actually have to do the one extra step of pushing the button of an app. I mean, good Lord.
I don't have that set up either.
I've been thirsting for it. Gosh, can if I could just save this half a millisecond time of my life, it'd be awesome.
XS was 2018.
Perhaps you'd be able to catch who the culprit is of calling you if you had that extra second.
Are you Fellini over here in terms of you need the updated camera?
I just told you I may or may not upgrade again this year.
Well, how new is that one?
Last year. You remember, because you mocked me, rightfully so, because I was in line at the Apple store in Castleton an hour and a half before the show and almost didn't make it in because it was an absolute cluster of other crazies trying to upgrade.
I want to say, I feel
iPhones.
like this phone's only like 3 years old, but am I way off on that?
All you need to do is look in the settings and the about and the model number on it.
Well, it's the 12, but I mean,
then 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
2020.
Yeah, I mean 4 years, right? Works fine.
It's an Olympic cycle.
It works perfectly
Again,
fine.
I've never once called you out for the phone. However, you have, in good fun, mocked my chaos of wanting to upgrade.
Well, I'm just saying you can save yourself a significant amount of money. Think about all the times you can cash in on that little app that you've got just a button away if you would save the $600 of waiting 2 weeks before you get the new phone. By the way, you would never know it from the tone of the last 5 minutes of this show, but it is a feel-good Friday, and I've got a great story about not one but two athletes that have persevered and overcome things that a lot of us probably would not find the inspiration from if it were us, but we can find the inspiration from them. And I'll tell you about them next. Franciscan's Good for the Heart Feel Good Friday. Keep in mind that Franciscan Health is the #1 heart program in Indiana for cardiology by health grades, #1 in Indiana for interventional coronary care and major cardiac surgery by CareChecks, and they offer affordable heart scans for just $49. Folks, I'm telling you, I could do a segment, to be honest with you, just on the people that have reached out to me to tell me that they did the non-invasive, very easy heart scan and got, from Franciscan for that matter, a heart health risk assessment that's included with every screening. But some that considered it life-saving because they found out that, in fact, they needed to go ahead and get the treatment necessary, which is really more simple than you would think in terms of getting a stent or getting proactive about their heart health because of buildup within the arteries of their heart and being preventative about making sure they do not have a heart attack or any sort of a cardiological issue. And that's what I love to hear. And Franciscan Health is the place to get that done. It is easy. It is affordable. It can be done out of pocket. It is something that is a peace of mind that it's worth 5 times the amount of just that $49. You can schedule a heart scan from Franciscan Health, and why not do it at a place, like I said, that ranks the best in Indiana? franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles. You could obviously simply Google Franciscan Health Heart Scan and find out all the information. 833-238-0688, the telephone number. That's 833-238-0688, the telephone number. I'll give that to you here coming up in just a minute. But over the course of the last week, I saw the stories of not one but 2 local athletes that I thought that's the kind of example of what sport's all about. Let's begin with Noah Malone, who is probably the more well-known of the 2 that I'm about to talk about. But Noah is a young man that at the age of 13 developed Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. Now, that is a mouthful. LHON is the easier way to say it, but it's an incurable genetic disease that leads to central vision loss. So just think about it, at the age of 13, you're a young athlete, you're right in the prime of the age where it's important to have, what kids think about you and what you think about yourself, and you're going through all of that. And in Noah's case, he suddenly develops 2400 vision in his left eye, 2600 vision in his right eye, making him technically legally blind. And yet he still had this dream of being a runner. He was a runner at Hamilton Southeastern High School. It was at Hamilton Southeastern High School, as a matter of fact, where he still managed to win the state championship in the 200-meter run. But he also was taking classes at the Indiana School for the Blind, because keep in mind, legally blind was Noah. And still representing not only his school, not only representing the state of Indiana by being with the Indiana School for the Blind, but eventually becoming a sprinter for Team USA and going to the Paralympics, where 4 years ago he won silver medals. And this year at the Paralympics in Paris, thought he had won the silver medal in the 200. The Turkish runner had won the gold. They went back and reviewed and found out that in actual technicality that it was Noah who won the gold medal, and so he is a gold medalist in the Paralympics for the first time, then came back and ran in the 400, winning a silver. So Noah Malone, who saw probably for a lot of people an adversity in front of him that many people would have said, that's it, my career is over, persevered through it. He public speaks. He's a motivational speaker, and he is a shining example of not letting adversity not letting adversity hold him back, and rather overcoming that and winning and continuing to chase his dreams and continuing to do Indiana and Indianapolis proud. Now, he's not the only person locally that caught my ear and caught my eye in terms of a local story that just spoke to a strength. I want to talk to you about Charlotte Vinson, who's from Yorktown, which is right outside of Muncie, one of the great volleyball traditions in the state of Indiana, Yorktown High School. And last year as a junior, Charlotte not only caught the eye of Indiana University, getting a scholarship to Indiana as a recruit for volleyball, but also became an All-American within volleyball in being one of the stars on a very talented and loaded Yorktown team. Over the course of the summer, Charlotte had what probably a lot of people have in the summertime, where you just get kind of that tickle in your throat and you think you've got a summer cold. This was in June, this past June. So we're talking, not long ago, right? where all of a sudden Charlotte thinks she has strep throat. It doesn't go away. So her parents take her to the doctor, and they say, wait a minute, it looks like you have something else going on here in terms of a bacterial infection. So we need to start getting you on some medication. During the course of that, they realized, medically speaking, that her body was actually going into a septic shock. And they said, you know what? She needs to be taken immediately to the hospital. Charlotte, with the septic shock that her body went into, started to have her organs actually shutting down. Now, I talked about the importance, of course, of knowing and being on top of the health of your heart. Her heart and lungs, because of how hard her body was working, couldn't sustain everything that they needed to do to try to get rid of this bacterial infection that from a strain A strep was infecting her body. So she was placed on machines that would support both her heart and lungs for her because her body was becoming that weak. And they didn't know for a while there, quite frankly, whether or not Charlotte Vinson, a young, healthy, athletic, nationally, talented national recruit in volleyball that had committed to Indiana, whether or not she was ever going to be able to get out of the hospital or even survive this terrible incident. So she's in the hospital. There's prayer vigils all around Yorktown. The school comes together. They hang banners in the school. Everybody is rallying around. And eventually, she goes on to 12 different medications a day. She spends 2 weeks in the hospital where at first she couldn't even speak because her body was so weak and she was disoriented from all of the medications. But eventually her body starts to come back. And the doctors are able to rally her back to the point where she's able to leave the hospital, and she is diagnosed with toxic shock syndrome caused by an invasive strain of strep A. And there was question whether or not Charlotte would ever be able to go back onto a volleyball court again. But she wasn't deterred. Like Noah Malone, she didn't let adversity hold her back. Instead, she started working on getting back, working on getting back with her teammates, taking advantage of the support and the prayer and the rallying around by her teammates, her school, her community. And now Yorktown is not only 11-1, not only are they 3-0 in the Hoosier Heritage Conference, but in their recent win over Wapahani, even though she returned to the volleyball court under limited action. But Charlotte's cardiologists have said that at this point her heart does have the strength because it's worked so hard to come back from everything that took place in terms of being hospitalized for so long and all the medications in her lungs. But her cardiologist said, you know what? She has enough cardiological strength that she can return to the volleyball court so long as it starts with limited action. In that limited action in Yorktown's battle against Wapahani last week, guess who had the game-winning point? And guess who lifted Yorktown to 10-1? And guess who now went in last night against Mount Vernon in her home debut because she missed so much at the beginning of the season and lifted Yorktown to now an 11-1 record and is back on the volleyball court and is an incredible story of perseverance, belief, and overcoming adversity when it comes your way and continuing to hold on to a dream. And Charlotte Vinson is back on the court for Yorktown. And, do we know whether or not she's going to be able to play at Indiana University? We don't know that yet. But at this point, the most important thing is she's continuing the dream of being with her friends, with her teammates, and representing Yorktown the right way. So she and Noah Malone both feel-good stories for the weekend in being able to bounce back and do what the odds said they weren't going to be able to do. And that's what it's all about. And again, for you folks, if you want to make sure that you are doing the right thing when it comes to your heart health, a heart scan is oh so important. Maybe you don't realize it, but genetically speaking, the odds might be in the favor of eventually you having some sort of a cardiological issue. That was my issue, as a matter of fact. A heart scan, the first step in making sure that you are on top of things. 833-238-0688, the telephone number. 833-238-0688 for just $49 for a heart scan from Franciscan Health. franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles is the website. You can also always simply text me if you have an idea for a feel-good story or somebody you know that has overcome something or just done one of those stories that makes you feel good, or B, if you have questions, you can always text me as well at 523-9288. Jimmy will come back and have his plays of the day next.
Today's plays of the day brought to you by the fine folks at Greenfield Signs and Lighting. Greenfield Signs, a professional, comprehensive sign company. 2 locations in central Indiana. They'll take hold of your project all the way from design to delivery. Family-owned and managed business for more than 4 generations. You don't often get a second chance to make a first impression. Make the most out of your first time with GreenfieldSigns.com. GreenfieldSigns.com for more information. Today's plays of the day. Focus throughout the weekend. We will start first with tonight's matchup in Brazil. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles to win outright over the Green Bay Packers on the money line. On Saturday, big noon kickoff, we will take the top 25 matchup between Texas and Michigan. Top 10 matchup, actually. We'll lay the 7 on the Longhorns as they are in the big house battling Michigan. Also on Saturday, we will play Travis Hunter of Colorado as an anytime touchdown scorer. On Sunday, take the Dolphins outright over the Jaguars. And on Sunday Night Football, lay 4.5 for the Lions as they take on the Rams. Eddie, any plays for you over the weekend?
I've got over 73.5 rushing yards for Jonathan Taylor, and I also have Jalen Hurts over 4.5 rushing yards in the first quarter of tonight's game.
Those are your plays of the weekend.
Okay, score prediction to round things out. Eddie Garrison, will begin with you.
27-20 Texans.
Jimmy Cook?
27-23 Texans.
Okay.
You?
I actually think that Indianapolis uncorks a little bit of offense, and I think that defense is going to be able to corral C.J. Stroud just enough. And I will say that the Colts win 29-24. 29-24
right.
Colts win and get out to a 1-0 start and snap that streak of opening game or opening week losses in the NFL.
I hear some field goals.
What's that?
I hear some field goals in that prediction, Jake, based on where the math is there. So.
No, they go for 2 a few times.
Okay,
They don't
good.
get 'em.
Okay,
How about that?
okay, all right.
John's up next. Now, where's John today?
Ale Emporium in Greenwood.
Ale Emporium in Greenwood, so you have plenty of time to get down and enjoy a cold beverage, Diet Coke sufficient, with John. He will be there until 6. We'll hand it off to him, and you know what we'll be talking about on Monday. A lot of talk about the Colts and the weekend of college football. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.